there is a change of tide. I can feel it, and it's coming. It's already kind of happening, and it's sort of like even in the most lopsided game, there's always a time when the team that's dominating lets up a little bit and loses their focus. And not that they ever had any real focus other than just hating Trump. You know, it was, I mean, if you've seen my other videos, you know that I was not a Trump supporter, and I've been a liberal my whole life. But it's been this process, and a lot of my travels have changed me. I've been all around the world and done a lot of volunteer work, and it sounds odd because usually people associate that volunteer work and that kind of stuff with humanitarian work, all that with the left, but it changed me, and I can explain that later, but the change in tide is what I want to talk about right now. And I think people are just, there's a few reasons. One, it's just getting boring, even for the most staunch supporters of impeachment and the most anti-Trump people. It's still not that interesting. You know, I've been on a lot of, from my background in performance art, I've been on a lot of shows, TV shows and whatnot, and the director is always wanting drama, and I get that. Like it's no fun if it's easy. They set up challenges. If you do it easily, nobody cares. You have to actually, there has to be a challenge, and there has to be some kind of drama. And so there is this drama now, but it's getting boring, and so it's like drama is letting up. And that is a big reason why it's going to change. Another factor is that, it leads into the factor of ratings. So there's no money in no drama, but there's also no money in this lopsided, repetitive drama, where, even for the people who believe Trump's racist, they're like, okay, we've heard that 10,000 times. What else do we got on it? And they're really grasping at straws at this point because all the tapes that they're playing in their heads are old from his election campaign, and now that's over 3 years ago, so nobody cares. Some people care, but in order to make it stick at this late stage in the game, they have to replay the clips, and of course that will show that people's views, that their recollection is off. It's been taken out of context. What he said wasn't actually racist, unless you believe like MS-13 is a race. So they're not going to do that. they're in a bind. The press is in a bind. They can't come up with. There's no new dirt on them. If they replay the old dirt, it'll show some context, and they run the risk of people looking into it more deeply. And the drama of the impeachment is running out because nobody really cares. So there's turning of the tide. Not so much that liberals are going to start believing Republicans or voting Republican, but just a turning of the tide, and that the press is going to start leaking some truth. Like, so far, most of the hearings in the first part of the impeachment hearing, and no cross-examination, no defense allowed for Trump, all that kind of stuff. And to top that all off, the press never even showed the Republican side. So that was situation, but this, like, Pelosi ran a big risk of even taking it to trial because they were doing really well. The testimony of anyone except the leftist view, so they were doing pretty well, and on every issue the press was only reporting one side. Only conservative news channels allow two sides of an issue. Like Tucker Carlson will have, every night he'll have somebody on who disagrees with him. That's very rare on any major news outlet other than Fox. So that's the second reason they're going to start changing. And I think that it's also just like the only focus is hatred of Trump. So that's been the laser focus. They don't have reasons, they don't have facts, they just hate Trump. So they remember a few things generally, but they can't quote it, they don't know where it's from, they don't know what context it was, so they're, so it's hard, even for somebody who just hates something that much, it's hard to stay focused on hate. I mean, it's so bad for you, for one thing, but and your body rejects it. I think that physically a human just literally cannot keep hating. So at some point, they physically reject it. Now, sometimes that's like to alleviate that, because it's the hatred is literally killing you inside. Because as the Buddha said, hating somebody is like taking poison, drinking the poison yourself and expecting somebody else to get sick. And that really is what's happening to people there. Because when you hate somebody, you're the one experiencing the bad feeling. You're the one experiencing the tightness in the chest and the shortness of breath and the intense nerves in your head and brain and neck and muscles tensing up and everything, higher heart rate, everything like that. So just physically, people cannot keep that up. Now, some people turn violent in order to release that stress from the hatred, and that's dangerous. And certainly Antifa is proof that that's what happens. They hate. That energy has to go somewhere. They're not doing anything constructive, so they unleash it physically on other people. But most people aren't going to do that. Even the most hateful people aren't going to do that. And at some point, they're just going to have to let go. Even in small ways, and some small ways will be to, ignore the news once in a while. So there is that, and that contributes. And I think the next thing I'm going to talk about is how to alleviate this and how to deal with all this pressure and what we've lost. The history has a lot of tracks, and we've seen, you can see different points in history where people, generally cultures, took a turn one way or another. It's not always progress, it's just choices and choosing one value system over another or something like that. And so, like for instance, sometimes I've gone to steampunk gatherings, and that whole little subculture is based on this idea that back in the era of the kind of Victorian era, there was Jules Verne and all the 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and all this steam power stuff, and there was a choice that culture had to. It was a very artful kind of an imaginative kind of science, and people had a choice to choose this fusion of art and science, or to just kind of go really cold and really industrial, and they chose industrial and cold, and the steampunk thing is kind of laments that choice of culture. And so we're at a juncture now where we're choosing. We have choices and paths, and a few years ago, there were choices that were presented for us, and on ways that we could turn. And there was a kind of a new agey push towards a Buddhist system of thought that, you know, it stemmed from Buddhism. It was the mindfulness thing, and it was the Eckhart Tolle ideas about letting go of the ego to be at peace with yourself and with others, and hopefully that's just on a little hiatus, and it will return, and it's not gone forever, because that would be true progress. What we're at now has been a regression into total ego and total selfishness, rather than like it's so obviously that's the opposite of selflessness, which was the goal of that movement. So I'm gonna talk about that in the next video, but we are seeing a change in tide, and we have an opportunity now because that from the leftists, from the people who are most full of hate, they're physically they're physically exhausted, and that combined with the fact that it's not interesting news and there's no drama anymore. If everything is drama, then there's no drama in that. So there has to be a push and a pull. It can't just be, something, a rocket going straight out into space. You're only going to watch it for a certain amount of time, and then you get bored. But two rockets heading straight at each other, probably not going to take your eyes off. And that's not really happening anymore. So discuss that later.